we're wrapping up our study on the Jewish festivals. So the way I'm looking at how I've kind of scheduled things out is that we'll be tonight and then next week we'll wrap up that study, and then we'll be on to our next adventure together. And oh, the places we'll go, right? But tonight we're going to look at a couple of things. They're technically not festivals or feast days, but they fit in that category because they're kind of they're prescribed in the same set of Old Testament laws, and it kind of is sort of in that same motif, if you will, and that is we're going to look at the Sabbath year, and we're going to look at the Year of Jubilee, and we're going to see what it was, what it is today, and what it has to say to us as Christians, and how it might point to Jesus Christ. All right? Fun? All right. Okay, I don't have that screen on, so I'm just going to trust that what's up here is right, and I'm going to teach by faith tonight, and just trust that that's going to be right. All right, we're going to be tonight. We're going to be in Leviticus chapter 25. Is where we're going to look at the first 6 verses of Leviticus 25, and then also in Deuteronomy 15. That's the 2 places that we're going to look at the prescription of the Sabbath year. So I'm going to begin in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather its fruit. But in the 7th year there shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. What grows of its own accord of your harvest you shall not reap, nor gather the grapes of your untended vine. For it is a year of rest for the land, and the Sabbath produce of the land shall be food for you, your male and female servants, your hired man, and the stranger who dwells with you." Actually, the thought continues into verse 7. "For your livestock, the beasts that are in your land, all its produce shall be for food." Okay, and so then also let's look at Deuteronomy 15. Verse 1 through 6. Deuteronomy 15, verse 1, "At the end of every 7 years you shall grant a release of debts. This is the form of the release. Every creditor who has lent anything to his neighbor," that's all right, Tom, don't worry about it. I don't have to see it. It's all right. It'll be all right. "This is the form of the release. Every creditor who has lent anything to his neighbor shall release it. He shall not require it of his neighbor or his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. Of a foreigner you may require it, but you shall give up your claim to what is owed by your brother, except when there may be no poor among you. For the Lord will greatly bless you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance. Only if you carefully obey the voice of the Lord your God to observe with care all these commandments which I command you today. For the Lord your God will bless you, just as He promised you. You shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. You shall reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over you." Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. When was this? When did this occur? Every 7th year. So you're going to work your ground for 6 years, and then the 7th year you're to let it lie fallow. Just like it's the same principle as the Sabbath day. You work 6 days and you rest your body on the 7th. So you work your land 6 years, you rest the land on the 7th. That's the idea of it. So how was it celebrated or observed? Well, as I said, it primarily has to do with the land. So the ground is to rest that year. You're not to plow it. You're not to plant anything. You eat what grows wild, and you don't even eat the land that was your crop. You don't even eat what was your crop. That's supposed to be for the poor. You can eat what grows wild, basically, and you let your land grow lie fallow. Now, what comes up in your fields that just from the residuals of what you had planted in years past, and it grows up, that's supposed to be for people without land and the poor of the land to gather it for free. And God said, if you do what I tell you to, you're not going to have any poor in your land anyway, because I'm going to so richly bless you. You're not going to have any poor people. But this is for the poor people, that they can come and glean the whatever grows that seventh year. The God, and then there might be this fear of, well, what are we going to eat if we can't plant anything? And God tells them that on the sixth year, I'm going to give you an exceptionally large harvest. So much so that you're not only going to eat for the seventh year, but the eighth and ninth year as well. In other words, I'll give you 3 years worth of harvest that sixth year. So just obey me, trust me, and you don't have to worry about it. And then a big part of it is all of the debts were canceled at that point. So if you come to me and you said, Brother Mark, I'm broke. We've fallen on hard times, and I said, well, I'll loan you some money. I'll loan you, $10,000. Which I don't have. Don't come and ask me for $10,000. I don't have it to loan you, but that's it. But I loan you that, and I say, okay, well, you can make, just pay me, every year when you bring in your crop, you just pay me, so much money. You pay me $1,000 a year or whatever. Well, at the end, whatever you don't have paid off by that seventh year, then I have to wipe the books clean. You walk away debt free, scot free, and so you kind of, how it works is, if you come to me and you want to borrow money, then I would kind of take into consideration, okay, how long before the Sabbath year? Are you going to, is next year the Sabbath year? And if so, are you going to be able to pay back that money in that time? Or do we have 6 years or else just say, okay, well, here's the money. You need $10,000, here's $10,000. You pay me what you can, knowing full well that when the seventh year comes, it all gets wiped clean. All right. So what was the purpose of that? Now there's a practical aspect to this and a theological aspect to this. Practical aspect to it, what would be the practical aspect of letting the land rest? It does, yeah. So, it's sort of an early version of crop rotation. Oklahoma, above anybody, should understand the importance of letting the land rest. There was a little thing in the 30s called the Dust Bowl that, from my understanding of history, came about because people misused the land, and as a result, we ended up with the Dust Bowl. So this was God's way of saying, okay, look, take care of the land. You're going to have it for a long, long time, so take care of it. And it was also, it was aid to the poor. It was a system set in place where poor people could get something to eat, get their needs met, and still maintain their dignity. It wasn't charity, and I want to point that out to you. This wasn't charity, because this wasn't you giving the poor people anything. This was, the idea is the land belongs to God. And the land is not yours, the land is God's. And on the 6th year, you don't plant anything. God makes it grow. So whatever grows there, you didn't have anything to do with it. You didn't plow the field, you didn't plant the field, you didn't harvest the field. Whatever is there, God grew it. God grew it on God's land. And God's poor people can come and eat that. So it was really a wonderful way of providing for poor people by letting them keep their dignity about them. Really a much better system than what most of our aid systems that we have in place today are. So that's kind of the practical aspect of it. And there's a theological aspect of it, and that is to remind the people that the land belongs to God. It's all God's land. And boy, I think that's an important lesson. That really, it's all God's. All of our possessions. It all belongs to God. In Wellington, I had an old farmer guy. He was an old man. He was in our church, and he was telling me, and I'd go out to his place and go dove hunting. And he had, I don't know, 1,000 acres or something. I mean, he had just a lot of land, which in West Texas, 1,000 acres ain't necessarily a lot of land, but, to me, poor boy that I grew up to be, 1,000 acres, you're a rich man. And and it was pretty. He had cattle running on it, and, it was then in kind of in that, the Caprock Plains kind of area, and it really was pretty. And I told him one day, I said, "Man, you got a really beautiful piece of ground here." He said, "Yeah, Brother Mark," he said, "I used to think that." He said, "I can remember I was standing on my back porch one day, and I was looking out, and as far as I could see was my land. And I said to myself, look at here, at all that I've got." I said, "Look out there, as far as I can see, it all belongs to me." He said, "God spoke to me," and he said, "Yeah, and the last guy that owned it stood in this same place and said the exact same thing." So it was he had a really good attitude about it. He saw it as God, that it belonged to God. God blessed him by letting him live there and use it for a few years, and then he would die and it would be somebody else's. And he had the right attitude, I thought, about it. So this was what they were supposed to. Now it was a really good deal, because basically you work 6 years and you get a year vacation. What in the world's wrong with that? God's trying to be good to the people, and he even says, "Hey, if you'll just trust me, I'll give you so much extra on the 6th year, you won't have to worry about working on the 7th. You'll have plenty to eat. In fact, you'll have enough to eat for the next 2 or 3 years. Just trust me." Yeah, it's like a year's vacation. Yeah. But did they keep? How well did they keep it? Not at all, really. Not very well at all. True or false? Scripture lists failure to keep the Sabbath year as one of the reasons for the exile. That is true. You can see different places of this. One is in 2 Chronicles chapter 36, but there's different references to it. But yeah, basically God says, okay, you're not going to keep the Sabbath year and give the land a chance to rest. I'm going to send you off into exile, and the land will have its Sabbaths then. What? It speaks to tithing in the sense that it all belongs to God. And so just like our money, every dime I have is God's. And, I think I think we have this misinformation or bad idea that I can give God 10% and the other 90% is mine, and I can do what I want to with it. That's not true at all, and nowhere in Scripture is that taught. Scripture teaches that it all belongs to God. And we're just stewards of that. And what? Trust. It all boils down to faith, really. It's all about faith. Okay, question. Yes, ma'am. All Israel. No, no, it would be, so it's for the whole nation. Yes. So on it has to do with when they entered the land, and then every seventh year you blow the trumpet and you proclaim, the Sabbath year, and the debts are forgiven, and the land lies fallow. But it's the same for every year, nationwide. That's right. That's right. Any other questions on Sabbath year? Okay, and let's look at the Year of Jubilee, which is really kind of the same thing, except now instead of you work 6 years and you let the seventh year, rest. Now you're going through 7 sevens. God likes the number 7. I'm sure you figured that out by now, but you see this number of 7 continue to crop up, and so you're to count off these years. And so you do the first cycle of 7, 6 years and a year of rest, and then you do the second 6 years and a year of rest. And so you go through 7 of those, 7 cycles of 7. So how many years is that? 49. So the 50th year is the Year of Jubilee, and it's very much like the Sabbath year, but it includes a little bit more. In other words, it's a little bit bigger deal. So it is every 50th year. So how it was celebrated or commemorated or whatever, it very much like Sabbath year, a lot of the same elements. The land rest, just like it would on a normal Sabbath year. The people without land gather freely. The poor people, or the people without land, they're welcome to go and glean, just like on a regular Sabbath year. But there's a couple of added elements to this Year of Jubilee. One is that the land goes back to the original owner. So if you sold me Daddy's farm, you, like you said, for whatever reason, you fell on hard times or whatever, and you said, "Hey, Brother Mark, we or maybe let's don't even do it that way. Let's just say I've got more land than I can farm. Would you like to come and, raise figs on on 100 acres that I've got over here that we're not doing anything with?" And I say, "Sure." I don't buy the land. I can't technically buy the land because it belongs to you and your family for eternity. Not really eternity, but forever, pretty much. Yes, I know ever and eternity is the same way, but I'm looking for a way to say it. Perpetuity. I started to say perpetuity, and I wasn't sure that would communicate very well. Anyway, where was I going with all this? I don't know. So you're going to sell me this 100 acres so I can raise figs on it, but you're not going to really sell it to me. You're going to lease it to me. And you're going to lease it to me based on the number of years to the Year of Jubilee. So in other words, if it's 40 years till the Year of Jubilee, then your 100 acres is going to be worth more than if it's only 10 years to the Year of Jubilee. Because if there's 40 years till the Year of Jubilee, how many fig crops can I raise? 40. And if there's 10 years, how many fig crops can I raise? Just 10. So it's the value of the land is based on how many crops I'm going to get to raise. But at the end of it, whenever the Year of Jubilee comes, you get your 100 acres back. no matter if I say, hey, it's I love this. I love my fig bushes, man. Don't take my figs away. Doesn't matter. It's yours. It belongs to you. Um, and here's another part. Any Hebrew slaves would go free at that point. Now, here's where this really comes into play. And it's really, it's to prevent perpetual indebtedness. All right? So let's say you fall on hard times. Let's say you do. And let's say, man, you come to me and you say, Brother Mark, I just can't make it anymore. I mean, we've had a couple of bad years in crops, and I can't feed my family, and I want to know, will you buy my land? And I say, okay, I'll buy your land. It's 20 years to the year of Jubilee, and so I'll give you this amount of money, and I'll buy your land. So you take that money and you live on that for a little while, but after a little while, you think, you get to the point where you say, hey, I can't make a living because I don't have any land left. I sold everything I had to Brother Mark. And we can't make a living because we don't have any land. And my kids are starving and my wife's starving. What am I going to do? Well, now you come back to me and you say, Brother Mark, we're starving to death. And I don't have any other land to sell you, so we're going to sell you ourselves. And we will sell ourselves into your service as slaves. If you don't like the term slave, you can call it servant, but it's all going to be the same thing. You're selling your services to me, basically. You become my slave. And I take you in, and I feed you, and I clothe you, and I meet your needs. And in payment for that, you work my field for me. Okay? And I make was once your field is now my field. I bought it, and now I've bought you. So now I have your field, and I have you. And now, how are you going to? Now, let me ask you this: how are you ever going to get out of that? How are you, a slave, going to make back the money to pay me to buy you back, or B, make back the money to buy your land back? You're not. And so it just becomes this perpetual indebtedness, hopelessness, this spiral of hopelessness. So God fixed that in His code, in His law. And He said, okay, every 50 years, it all gets wiped clean. So at the year of Jubilee, whenever that is, I may own you and I may own your land. And you may not have anything but the clothes on your back, and I might have been the one that bought that for you. On the year of Jubilee, you walk away scot-free, you don't owe anything, and you get your land back. Now, how cool is that? God fixed it. And so it's really do what? You make an interesting point. There is no record in Scripture that Israel ever observed the year of Jubilee. Now, why do you think that is? Greed. Yeah, greed. Greed. Yes, ma'am. Right. On that 50th year. That's right. No, that's right. That's right. Right. Sure. So yeah, you're right. On the year of Jubilee, you would get basically what would have been the Sabbath year, and then you would get the year of Jubilee as well. That's correct. Yeah, and I mean, like I said, all they had to do was trust God, and lack of faith caused them to do that. So the purposes for, oh, by the way, there's kind of a cool thing that about the whole Hebrew slave thing. So you were only supposed to be able to keep a Hebrew slave for 6 years. And that didn't have any, that was regardless of when the year of Jubilee fell. You couldn't keep them for longer than 6 years. And then you had to turn them loose. But if the slave said, "Hey, so let's do us again." So you come and you sell yourself to me and you become my slave, and you work for me for 6 years, and then after 6 years, I say, "Okay, you worked for me 6 years. You're free to go. You can go." And you say, "But Brother Mark, we love you, and we had it 10 times better with you than we ever had by ourselves, and we don't want to leave. I don't want to leave." There was a special provision that I could take an awl, if think like an ice pick kind of deal, and I could pierce your ear with that thing into the doorpost, and that would be kind of the symbol to the world that, okay, I've made a decision that I'm going to belong to Brother Mark for a lifetime. So I tried to get Lisa to let me pierce her ear with an ice pick, but she wasn't for that. So I don't know. She keeps talking about our 50th anniversary. I think she's holding out for the Year of Jubilee. I'm not sure, but anyway. Free at last, free at last. So, oh goodness. So let's talk about the purpose behind this. So a lot of it is the same as the Sabbath year. It lets the ground rest. It helps the poor people. But it does a couple other things. It promotes wealth distribution. In other words, it's okay. And I don't know what your beliefs are on the politics of fiscal policy, and I'm not going to attempt to try to teach you an economics lesson tonight. I'm just going to make a basic statement, and that is that it's not good for society when the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and there's no hope that you can ever break out of that cycle. And when poverty is such that it throws generations into this cycle of more poverty and more ignorance, while the rich continue to get richer and richer, it's not good for society, and it's certainly not God's ideal for how He wants His world to function and His people to function. So this is God's way with His nation, His people, of reshuffling the deck, if you will. So I don't know, you probably don't have anybody in here that lived through the Great Depression and the days of FDR's New Deal. Probably none of you are that old. And if you are, don't bother telling me, because I've already embarrassed you by saying that now, probably. But you probably remember it from history. Basically, Roosevelt comes to office, and he inherits a very difficult situation. I mean, it's the height of the Great Depression. People are literally starving to death. Nobody can find work. And so he says, what we need is a new deal. And he uses a phrase that you would find in playing poker. Now, you might not appreciate the analogy that he uses, but he basically says this: look, we've got a situation where the poor are getting poorer, the rich are getting richer, and there's no way for them to ever get out of that cycle. So what we need is a new deal. Let's shuffle the cards up again and give everybody a new deal. In other words, let's give everybody a second chance. If you're in this situation where, you're perpetual indebtedness, perpetual poverty, with no hope of ever being able to break out of that cycle, he said, hey, let's give people a new deal. This is basically, the Year of Jubilee is basically God's version of the New Deal. It basically says, we're going to shuffle things up and we're going to give everybody a fresh start. Everybody starts at ground zero on the Year of Jubilee. So in 50 years' time, you may have become extremely wealthy. I mean, you may own thousands of acres and hundreds of slaves and have money and livestock and all this great stuff. Your Jubilee comes, you go back to zero. You go back to what you started with, which is the land that you inherited from your father and your own family, and you go from there. Or shoe may be on the other foot, and you may be in dire straits, and you might have fallen on hard times, and you've sold off the family farm, and you have nothing, and you've sold off yourself and your kids, and you and your wife and your kids are all enslaved, and your kids have never known what it is to breathe freedom. Your Jubilee comes, you get to start over. Hey, we get to walk out of Master's house scot-free, and I get my daddy's land back. That gives people hope. That's something to live for, and it if you're poor, it gives you hope. But if you're rich, it reminds you that, hey, this was never really mine to start with. It's all God's, and God let me use it for a while, and now it's going back to who it belongs to. So that was the idea there. And we did the true or false. There was no scriptural evidence that they ever actually practiced it. I think the biggest reason was because of greed. Why would you turn loose of it if you think about it in today's world, in today's society. How many rich people do you know that's willing to give everything they've got back to the poor and start over at ground zero? Yeah. So, Israel was no different. Interesting that the nation of Israel today, they practice the Sabbath year, but not the Year of Jubilee. And they've got an interesting reason that they give. It's because some rabbi back in, some BC era, made some statement that in order to practice the Year of Jubilee, all the tribes of Israel must be returned to the land of Israel. And they're saying because not all the Jews are back, we don't really have to practice the Year of Jubilee. So I don't know. I'll let you figure out if you think that's a valid reason or not, or let the Lord sort all that out, I guess. But anyway, I do know that they do not practice it today. Questions on any of that? You did not enjoy the same rights. That's right. So you could own foreign slaves, like if you were from Egypt, or if I had slaves from Egypt or Babylon or something, I wouldn't have to turn those loose at the Year of Jubilee. Only Hebrew slaves. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and there's also a provision where there's this idea, and this comes into play in the book of Ruth, this idea of the kinsman redeemer. That if my land is sold into slavery, or if I'm sold into slavery, then my next of kin is supposed to come buy me out. And that's why in the book of Ruth, Boaz goes to this, who is the kinsman redeemer, and he says, hey, I've got a piece of land that belonged to, was it Elimelech, I guess. Anyway, he says, I've got this piece of land, and the guy says, oh yeah, I'll buy that back. He says, oh, well, by the way, Ruth comes with it. He's like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't want to buy a wife when I bought a piece of land. So she ends up with Boaz instead. But it's the same kind of idea there. All right, so let's talk a little bit about, what this may have to do with us as Christians, or how this may speak to us as Christians. So first of all, what modern practices do you think might be similar to the observance of the Sabbath year? Do we have anything in place similar to that? Yeah. Yeah, so That's in the works right now. I was reading that. Um, so, I mean, here's some things I see. I mean, I see like vacations as a time of rest to kind of let your life go fallow. Um, some schools, religious schools, and even churches have given. They will give like I know seminaries will give their professors a Sabbath or sabbatical. And so you basically they teach for 6 years and then they get a year where they don't teach. Now it's not supposed to be just a year off where you go take your family to Disneyland for a year or something. It's supposed to be that you would spend that time kind of refreshing your relationship with the Lord. So a lot of them will, maybe take an extra study course, or they will write a book, or they'll do something constructive ministry wise, but they're not teaching. Churches do that, usually not after 6 years. I don't know if I know anybody that any church that 60 years, yeah, I don't know. I know, I know, yeah, I was a youth intern at church in Corpus Christi, and the pastor comes in, and I don't think he'd been there very long, and he's like, "Well, I'll see y'all. I'm gonna in about a month. I'm gonna take the month of June off." And he took the month of June, and I mean, he had the vacation time, but I always thought that was kind of he took a month. I'm gone the month of June. That just seemed kind of, but I mean, his family needed him, and there was other extenuating circumstances. But anyway, I haven't taken a month at a time yet, uh, but I hold that in reserve. It's like the nuclear option, man. I might do that one day. You know. And then also I think crop rotation. I mean, we sort of practice letting the land rest. I mean, we have learned through study of agriculture that hey, it's not good to work your land to death. The land does need a rest. Out in West Texas, I don't know if they do it here or not. Probably do, but I know out in West Texas they have what they call CRT. No, CRP. Sorry. CRP. Okay, well, you can see what a farmer I am. I don't know. But anyway, basically, the government will pay you to plant, basically to let your land go fallow, is basically what it's there for. Um, so, what theological principles that we find in the Sabbath year are relevant to Christians? I think it's a warning against greed for sure that we need to be aware of. Provisions for the poor. And then remembering that it all belongs to God, and we are God's slaves. As Christians, we belong to God, and it all belongs to God, us as well as all of our possessions. Now, do people break the spirit of the Sabbath year today? Yes. How do people do that? In every way, but yeah, I mean, yeah. Um, I have known people that they get vacation. They work for a factory or company or something, and they'll get 4 or 5 weeks vacation a year. They never take it. They'll work just work themselves to death, and they'll say, well, just give me get to the end of the year, about to lose their vacation. Well, just pay me out in whatever my vacation time is worth. You know, you break the Sabbath long enough, and the Sabbath will break you before you know it. The greed, we break it with greed a lot. Always, when my barns are full, what am I going to do? Well, I'll tear down my barns, build bigger barns. That thing. So let's frame it from a more positive aspect, I guess. What are some practical ways that we can observe the principle of the Sabbath year as Christians? Well, I would say, first of all, take your vacations and your time and your days off. If you got them, come and take them. You need time to let your life go fallow. You need time to get away from the stresses of work, the stresses of day-to-day life, and just focus on resting, focus on God, focus on your family, and let your life go fallow for a while. If I could say any word of advice to young Christian men today and have them listen to me, it would be take your vacations and your days off. Because before you know it, and trust me, because I'm already there, before you know it, your kids will be grown and gone, and you and your wife will be old, and you'll look around and go, what happened? I mean, our kids are gone, and we're old, and we never went anywhere or did anything. All I did was just go to work. Your kids will remember something from their childhood. They will either remember, hey, you remember that time that Dad loaded us all in the back of that old worn-out station wagon and drove us all on that crazy trip to Florida for 2 weeks? You know, those were good times. Or they will remember, Dad never made it to one of my birthday parties. He never made it to one of my soccer games. He was too busy working. You know, you gotta take time to let your life go fallow. I had my first church. The former pastor, he had died of a massive heart attack, like in his 50s. But his widow was still a member of the church. Talk about ghost. Talk about trying to follow a ghost. But anyway, his widow was there, and their daughter was still a member of the church. Now, their daughter was middle-aged at that time, 40s-ish, I would say. But we were all friends. I mean, we got along good. And so when Lisa was expecting our first child, I just went to this woman and I said, hey, the daughter I'm talking about, I said, I want you to tell me, like, what advice can you give me? I said, I didn't grow up a preacher's kid. I've never tried to raise preacher's kids. What can you tell me? What advice can you tell me that will help me in raising my kids as preacher's kids? She looked dead on at me with this stone cold look, and she said, what I remember most about my daddy is that he had time for everybody else but me. And I just sent a cold chill down my back. I prayed right then, and I said, God, please help me to not be the kind of dad that my kids can say it and it be true that my daddy had time for everybody else but me. You have to have time to let your life go fallow. So that's my sermonette on that. But I believe in it. How about this principle? Give what grows extra to the poor. You have an amount of money that it takes for you to live on, for you to meet your needs, for you to pay your bills and have what you need. And that should be somewhere less than what you bring home every month. Now, if it isn't, you need to adjust your budget because something's not right. You're making too little or spending too much or something. But if it's the way it's supposed to be, you should be making more than what you're spending. So then the question becomes, what am I going to do with this extra money? Well, there's only 3 things that you can do with money. You can spend it, you can save it, you can give it away. Well, to spend that money would really be wasting that money because you already said you got what you need to live on. Now, you can save it, and that's smart and that's wise to save for retirement or save for a rainy day, but what are you going to do when you've saved all you need to save? I mean, you're going to be like the man in the Bible that says, my barns are full. What am I going to do? I'll tear down my barns, build bigger barns. How much money do you really need? How much savings do you really need? So at some point, you've got this extra money. What are you going to do? How about using it to help people with? How about using it to meet needs of people? That's a godly thing to do. So that's just a thought there. People in my church, nobody's asked me that in Oklahoma. I don't know if the lottery is just not as big a deal up here as it was, but in Texas, people would ask me a lot of times, well, Brother Mark, what would you do if you won the lottery? It's $50 million this week. I say, well, that'd be very difficult since I don't play the lottery. So although statistically I have just as good of odds of hitting the lottery by not playing it as you do by buying a ticket, but they said, what would you do if you were given, if you won $50 million, however you won it? I said, well, I'd probably give it away. And they're like, what? I said, well, I've got everything I need. God's already meeting all my needs. And the church pays me a living, so what would I need with $50 million? That's just something to get in trouble with. I'd give it away. I don't think I could ever make people understand the reasoning behind that. But, give what grows extra to the poor. If you get extra money, use it to help people with. And then how about this idea of forgiveness of debts? Now, Jesus said this in the model prayer, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And he wasn't talking necessarily about monetary debts. What was he talking about? He was talking about if you've wronged me in some way. You know what would be cool? If we could proclaim a year of Jubilee and wipe the moral debt clean. And just say, hey, whatever you did, we're starting clean, fresh slate. However you've hurt me, whatever you've done to me, I'm wiping it clean and we're going to start fresh. You've got a zero balance. And you did the same for me, and we did it for each other. What an awesome thing. Even if we just did it in a church, and we just said, okay, this Sunday starts the year of Jubilee. We all have a zero balance on the moral debt. What an awesome thing. All right, questions on that? I'm running out of time. So let's get to the foreshadowing of Christ. I'm going to let you read these scriptures that I put here just because time-wise we're really running short. But look at the questions that I've asked. In what way did the life and work of Jesus fulfill the Sabbath year? Basically, he provides rest for our souls. Come unto me, all you who are weary, and you will find rest. Release of slaves. We were slaves to sin and death. And forgiveness of debt. He forgave us our sin debt. So there's that idea there. And how is the return of Christ foreshadowed in the year of Jubilee? I've given you some scriptures there. But basically, it's going to point you this direction. The earth is growing crops. And it's a crop of souls. It's a crop of people. And Jesus is going to reap that harvest, and then the earth will rest. And the land belongs to Christ. And it will be returned to Him. And so one of these scriptures that I gave you to read is the passage that says, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our God and of His Christ, and He shall reign forever. So this earth, it belongs to Christ, and He will come and reign here, and we will rest with Him. It will be returned to Him. It's in the hand of the enemy right now, but He will return, and it will be returned to Him, and He will reign as King. So there's that idea. Questions on Sabbath year or Year of Jubilee? Okay, I have one short video. It's about 2 minutes long. It's on the year of the Sabbath year. I didn't find a good one on the Year of Jubilee, but probably because they don't celebrate it. But this one's on the Sabbath year, and it's from the lady from the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews.
How can this lettuce grow without soil? Because I'm in a hydroponic greenhouse. A hydroponic greenhouse is one of the creative ways that the Jewish people can follow the biblical command to let the land rest this year. It's the year of Shemitah. This is the biblical command that only relates to the land of Israel. In Exodus it says, For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops. But during the 7th year, let the land lie unplowed and unused. The Jewish people are to let the land rest. And the truth is, it gets a little complicated. Because here in Israel, we grow 95% of the fruits and vegetables that the people consume. Shemitah isn't about not growing food. Shemitah is a Sabbath for the land. Just as we are commanded to rest every 7th day on the Sabbath. So how is it possible to grow any food in Israel this year? One option is to grow the food up here, above the ground. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri ha'adama. Delicious. Just as God loves the land of Israel, he loves us, his children. Ask yourself, how does this godly wisdom inspire you in the biblical principles of rest? Leave your comments below. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not, and what other videos you want to see. I read every comment. From the Holy Land, our home, Shalom.
Somebody said that's cheating. I said, yeah, I thought so too. But anyway, we're still looking for ways to get around that. Okay, appreciate you being here tonight. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you for Sunday. Let's close in a word of prayer tonight. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your word and the chance to study the Sabbath year and the year of Jubilee. I pray that you would help us, God, to put the spiritual principles that we learn from this into practice in our own life. God, bless us as we go from here and bring us back on Sunday ready to worship you. And we pray these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.